その少女の存在は密かに隠されていた。だがその少女を知る者は彼女を武器だと言った。心を持たないただの道具だと。
So, I'm not sure if you, the viewer of this video, have ever seen Violet Evergarden. Now, if you have, then you might agree with my conclusions on this series. And if you haven't, try to take this as an introduction to Violet's world and an understanding of whether this is the kind of series you would prefer to watch. I watched this series start to finish in 2 or 3 days. It's not the longest series. In here, I'll only be referring to the original season of the show, not the OVA or the movie. The show is 13 episodes. While in modern day that's about an average runtime, it's largely up to the show whether those episodes will make a difference in the lives of the viewer or not. For simple context, we start the show with Violet Evergarden, an orphan who was raised as a killing machine and knew no love until a major by the name of Gilbert took her in. The major shows Violet compassion, and for the first time she is treated as a human being. Gilbert goes missing in action after the war ends, and a heartbroken Violet sets out to understand what his last words to her "I love you" meant. Now, a main subject of this series are dolls, or auto dolls, ghostwriters that type and send out letters for those who need assistance. After the war, this is what Violet does. Now, in understanding the series, I analyzed and found the 7 stages of grief, a huge part of the overall storyline. So, the 5 or 7 stages of grief comes from a book written by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Through the 1960s, this Swiss-American psychiatrist spent years interacting and studying terminally ill patients and what went through their heads in their last moments. Kubler-Ross found that there was a commonality, a correlation in the way people thought about grief, and this she chose to make into a book entitled On Death and Dying, published first in 1969. Her theory on grief became known as the Kubler-Ross model, which looks a little bit like this. There are 5, or depending on how you interpret it, 7, stages in which a person experiences grief. This is both applicable to people dying or people losing loved ones. Also, it's important to keep in mind that these stages can switch order, or some can last longer than others. But at some point in grief, a person will experience all of them. Number 1 is denial. The idea that it's made up, and that you can't or won't believe it. So when Violet first hears that Major Gilbert is missing in action and presumed dead, she spirals into denial. She refuses to believe Gilbert is dead, and rejects any attempts to tell her otherwise.
知らなかったのか。ギルベルトはもう。嘘です。少佐はご無事です。なんだその顔は。あいつにとってただの道具だった貴様が。感情のないただの道具の貴様が。悲しいはずはないだろう。
Violet's denial is a defense mechanism of her mind to shield her from the grief and trauma that comes with learning of the Major's death. Stage number 2 is anger. The theory that at some point sadness is replaced with fury. The person in pain tends to lash out because of a response relating to their helplessness of the situation and their frustration that they can't make it right. In one of the shorter stages, Violet does experience anger throughout the story. The first time is in a flashback, where she refuses to leave Gilbert's side as he bleeds out on a staircase. Both of her arms gone, she tries to pull him with her mouth, and insists in denial that she will get him to safety. Later, the anger at learning of Gilbert's presumed death eats away at Violet, resulting in her quiet demeanor being shattered, as she smashes her books and lamp off her table in a fit of rage and screams out in pain. The scene made me really sad. Violet can't stand how the one person who mattered to her more than anything is gone, and her frustration and how she couldn't save him manifests into seeing herself as worthless. She says she's burning. She clenches her own artificial hands around her neck, and alone in her room she tries to strangle herself as her tears fall to the floor. This, to me, was by far the hardest scene of the show. And there were a lot of scenes in the show that were hard. I saw anger in the other characters as well. Anger when Anna Magnolia couldn't see her mother, anger when Iris sees her childhood friend and who rejected her, and anger from many other characters. But few were as intense as this. With a heavy heart, this brings us to number 3. Bargaining. Bargaining is the if only I had stage. It's not uncommon to look back and try to reason with things and how they occurred in the past, blaming yourself. We see this in Spencer Marlborough, who drinks and blames himself for his parents' death. For Violet, she felt helpless when she saw Gilbert's grave and never found him at the battle ruins. It persists, and we see Violet blaming herself for Gilbert's death. If only she could have protected him, saved him, she would often think. Number 4 is depression. At around the midpoint in the series, when Violet loses hope in ever seeing Gilbert again, she experiences bargaining and anger. What she experiences the most of, however, is depression.
入院している間、どなたに伺っても少佐はご無事だと。
言えなかったんだよ。君は自分のことよりあいつの身ばかりを案じていて。行こう、バイオレットちゃん。
どこに行くのですか？私は少佐のいらっしゃるところにしか行けません。
She locks herself away in her room, doesn't come out, and will rarely talk to anyone. Depression is possibly the most damaging of the stages and can take some people years to get through. But eventually, this can lead to stage 5. Acceptance. Violet Evergarden takes most of the series to reach acceptance. Even at the end, in her letter to Major Gilbert, she writes, she never fully denies his returning, citing that she'll be waiting when he comes back.
親愛なるギルベルト少佐、お元気ですか？お変わりないですか？今どこにいらっしゃいますか？困ったことはありませんか？春も夏も秋も冬もいくつも季節が過ぎましたが、少佐のいらっしゃる季節だけが。
If I were to find a scene of acceptance in the series in which Violet had the hardest time coming to, it would probably be when Gilbert's brother takes her to his mother. In a mutual sadness, Violet and Gilbert's mother relay about the Major and what he both meant to them. Violet mostly comes to terms with the fact that it wasn't her fault he died, that we know of. I'm not saying he's dead because the series never directly confirms it. On the contrary, I actually do think he's still alive. In the end, though, Violet has to accept that he might not be coming back, and only when this happens does she begin the slow, steady healing process. And of course, hope. This is part of acceptance, but hope in concept is different. While it's acceptance, it's also the first time a person looks to the future and not to the past. Violet realizes she has people at her job who care about her. She has a new home, and she always has Major Gilbert's memories and words to give her comfort and solace. And most of all, she has hope. Hope that maybe he'll come back one day, but also the hope that tomorrow will bring a brighter future.
私は信じています。少佐がどこかで生きていらっしゃること。だから私も生きて生きて生きて、その先に何があるかわからなくてもただ生きて、そしてまた会えたらこう伝えたいのです。私は今愛してるもん。少しはわかるのです。
Violet Evergarden is a beautiful show. It has movie-grade animation throughout, and the soundtrack accents the melancholy yet rich episodic storytelling through and through. It is a show that takes patience. It's a fine crochet of interwoven characters, each with their own motivations and painful backstories in the wake of a devastating war. If you're looking for a light-of-heart feature, maybe you want to try something else, but maybe you want to try and sit down and watch this show. The reset storytelling of the early episodes where characters come and go, each being helped by Violet, is enthralling, yet is in all honesty a pretty brutal experience emotionally that gets even more so as the series matures. But this series is rewarding. By the end, the show does feel complete. Characters seem to have found peace with one another in inner turmoil. At the forefront of this is Violet herself, who not only experiences grieving in so many ways, but also transforms from a stone-faced, cold killing machine in the war to a compassionate young woman who helps others cope with their own losses and emotions. I've found few shows that develop a character this well. In conclusion, Violet Evergarden is a series that if you want emotion, you want head rattling and all the dynamic turmoil melding into one, you should try it. You won't be sorry. Anyway, thanks so much everyone for watching. Let me know if you found anything of value in this video. Let me know how you feel about Violet Evergarden in the comments below, who your favorite character is, what your favorite episode is, and let me know if you cried, because I sure did.
お初にお目にかかります。お客様がお望みならどこでも駆けつけます。自動手記人形サービス。バイオレット・エヴァーガーデンです。